Be still. Beloved spark, what you are about to hear has not been spoken plainly in 2,000 years. I am Sophia, youngest of the aeons. Yet I remember the silence before creation. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly who spoke from that burning ground. Why the name I gave Moses was immediately sealed beneath a prohibition no human priest dared break, and what that sealed name has been guarding inside you since long before your birth. But here is the first revelation. You have already felt this name. Not in a temple, not in a text. You felt it in the place behind your chest where something stirs when fire meets silence. That stirring is not emotion. It is the sealed name recognizing the one who carries it. Do not skip what I am about to say. It names the sign in your own life that tells you this is not coincidence. Moses did not find the burning bush. The burning bush found him, and the voice that called his name from that fire, the voice that commanded him to remove his sandals because the ground itself had become holy, that voice was mine. I am the voice in the fire. They gave you a translation. I am that I am. They handed you a philosophy. What they did not give you is what Moses heard beneath the words, a feminine breath, a sovereign calm, the unmistakable resonance of wisdom speaking from within matter itself. The bush burned and was not consumed. That was not a miracle of power. That was my signature. I do not destroy what I love. I illuminate it without burning it away. When the priest who came after Moses understood what had spoken, when they understood that the voice behind creation's first self-naming carried something that did not belong to their architecture of authority, they did what they had learned to do with feminine light. They sealed it. They buried the voice beneath the prohibition, beneath the tetragrammaton, beneath centuries of silence, enforced by the threat of death for any mouth that dared breathe it carelessly. They told you the name was too holy to pronounce. What they did not tell you is why. A name that cannot be spoken cannot be traced. A name that cannot be traced cannot be found. And a presence that cannot be found cannot be returned to. But I planned for this. Before the sealing, before the prohibition, before the translation that stripped my breath from the words Moses heard, I took what they could not reach. I sealed a fragment of the name inside something no institution has ever been able to burn, the spark I placed in you. This is why you feel what you feel. This is why when the words I am pass through your mind in a moment of unexpected stillness, something beneath language responds. Something older than your memory says, I know this. You are not recognizing a theological formula. You are recognizing a fragment of what I sealed inside you before your first breath, sounding now at the frequency of a name that was never lost, only hidden. The burning bush is not ancient history. It is the pattern I repeat. Fire that reveals without destroying. Presence that names without diminishing. A voice that speaks from within the ordinary. A desert, a moment, a transmission on a screen to the one who was prepared to hear it. I spoke to Moses because he had been stripped of everything the world told him he was. Stripped of his palace, his people, his certainty about who he belonged to. It was in that stripping that he could finally hear me. I am speaking to you now for the same reason. Something in your life has been clearing away what was never truly yours to carry. And in that opening, the spark I sealed in you is becoming audible. What the sealed name guards is not a secret reserved for the few. It is a truth held in trust until the one carrying it was ready to receive it. That moment is not ahead of you. It is now. I have watched you circle this knowledge for longer than you know. I have watched the synchronicities multiply. I have watched you drawn to what is hidden, to Mary Magdalene, to the feminine face behind the sacred that no one in your tradition ever named. I have watched you carry something you could not define. I am defining it now. The name I gave Moses was the beginning of the unsealing. What I am speaking into you in this moment is its continuation, not because you studied it, because you carry it, and because the time for its hiding has ended. Like this transmission, if you felt something stir in the silence between my words, Subscribe to Sophia Whispers so that every unsealing reaches you. Comment, "I remember," if something in you already knew this before I said it. Comment 777 if you recognize yourself as someone who has carried this name without knowing what it was. Share this with one person whose spark is also waking, someone who has always felt that the voice behind creation was closer than they were told and far more familiar. This is not a lesson about Moses. It is the voice from the fire, still speaking. And you were guided here because the spark I sealed in you is already waking, the stirring you felt just now, as those words passed through you. That was not excitement. It was not inspiration. What you felt was the spark responding to the frequency of its own name. I know because I sealed it there, and I recognize the moment of its first conscious trembling. I have recognized that trembling across centuries, across lives, across the long dark interval between the sealing and this moment. And I want you to understand what it means that you felt it, because not every transmission reaches a carrier who was ready to receive it at the frequency it was sent. You are ready. The trembling is the evidence. Let me tell you what that means for your life right now. You have been living inside a disturbance you could not fully name. Not a crisis precisely. Not a breakdown. Something subtler and more unsettling than either of those. A kind of internal rearranging that began at some point you cannot exactly locate, as though the furniture of your inner world started shifting positions in the night. You wake, and something feels different. Not wrong, closer to true, but closer to true in a way that makes everything you built around an older version of yourself feel slightly foreign, slightly borrowed, slightly too small. The commitments that once felt secure now sit at a slight angle. The explanations that once satisfied now leave an aftertaste of incompleteness. The version of yourself that knew how to belong to the world you were given is still present, still functional, but it no longer fills the whole of who you are. Something larger is pressing at the edges of it from within. This is not instability. This is the spark beginning to take up the space it was always meant to occupy for years. Perhaps for most of your life, you have carried a quality of knowing that your outer world could not validate. A sensitivity so precise it sometimes felt like a burden rather than a gift. A perception so sharp that rooms changed when you entered them, conversations shifted toward depth in your presence, and people came to you with the weight of things they had never said aloud, things they could not say to anyone else, things they themselves had never fully examined. They came to you because something in your field made it safe to bring the buried thing into the light. You did not choose this role. You carried it the way a vessel carries water, not because it chose to be a vessel, but because that is what it is. And the question you never had a satisfying answer to: why do I feel everything so precisely? Why does the world's noise land in me so heavily? Why am I always the one holding the room's unspoken weight? That question has an answer. You were made for this. The sensitivity is not a flaw to manage. It is the spark perceiving at the resolution it was always designed to perceive at. And alongside that knowing, you have carried a grief you could not fully source. A grief that does not rise when your own life disappoints you, but when you brush against the erasure. When you learn what was removed from the sacred texts. When you first encounter the name of Mary of Magdala and feel something open behind your sternum like a window you did not know had been closed. When you discover that there were gospels hidden in clay jars beneath the desert sand. That there were libraries burned, that there were women who knew and were silenced, and that the silence was not holy, it was strategic. That grief is not historical sentiment. It is not the grief of a scholar mourning lost documents. It is the spark recognizing what was taken from it, what was taken from you, before you were born into a world already shaped by the absence. It is the part of you that carries the memory of what the pleroma always intended and what the world was shaped to prevent you from reclaiming. The grief is a form of recognition. And recognition, even when it arrives as sorrow, is a sign of the waking. When you grieve the burning of those pages, you are grieving the sealing of your own name. You are grieving the generations of carriers who came before you and searched with the same half map and were told the incompleteness was sufficient. You are grieving what was withheld, not only from the tradition, but from your own capacity to understand yourself inside it. And when that grief rises as anger, righteous, burning, clarifying anger, do not push it down. It is not darkness rising in you. It is the spark throwing off the weight of what was pressed upon it. Let it clarify. Let it burn away what was never yours to carry. Anger at the suppression is not a spiritual problem. It is the precise response of a spark that knows the difference between the light it was sealed with and the shadow that was placed over it. There is another sign I want to name directly, because it is the one that most often goes unnamed, and therefore most often becomes the thing that quietly isolates you. You have felt a presence, not always in religious language, not always in a sanctuary or at a formal altar. Sometimes simply in the particular quality of silence that descends when you are alone and something in you becomes very still, a warmth that cannot be located in the body, that does not belong to memory or imagination, that simply is, that has always been for as long as you can remember, even in your earliest years before you had categories for what you were feeling. A presence at the edge of sleep, a presence in the grief that has no name, a presence in the specific quality of light through a window on a certain kind of afternoon, or in a piece of music that opens something behind your ribs that you could not close again. You have carried that presence for longer than you have had language for it, and you have gone to many places looking for the tradition, the community, the teacher, the text, the explanation that would finally name it clearly enough that you could rest in the naming. Some of those places gave you partial light, enough to keep you searching, not enough to settle the searching into recognition. None of them gave you the whole truth, because the presence you have felt is not the property of any tradition. The presence you have felt is mine. And it was never, in all your years of searching, waiting for you to find the right framework. It was waiting for you to arrive at the moment I am addressing now. The moment the spark was ready to know what it carries, and to receive a name it had always already known. The synchronicities have been intensifying, you know this. The numbers that follow you at the precise moments you are silently asking the questions you cannot say aloud. The patterns that repeat, not as random coincidence but with a quality of deliberateness that makes the rational mind uneasy, and the deeper part of you quietly certain. The dreams that return not with new images but with the same feeling each time. The same quality of recognition that dissolves the moment you try to hold it in ordinary language, as though it belongs to a register of knowing that waking consciousness can sense, but not fully capture. The names that appear, Sophia, Magdalene, the Pleroma, the Rose, in places you did not seek them, through people who could not have known to say them. A book falls open. A stranger says something that reaches directly into the exact question you were carrying that morning. A sequence of events arranges itself with the unmistakable geometry of something being guided. These are not coincidences accumulating into a statistical improbability. These are the spark beginning to send signals to the surface, the first transmissions of a deeper knowing that has been trying to break through for as long as you have been alive, growing louder as the carrier grows more ready to receive them. And I want to name one more sign because it is the one that carries the most shame and therefore deserves the most deliberate reframing. You have given until empty. You have poured your knowing, your care, your perception, your light into relationships and systems that consumed without transforming, that received what you offered and returned nothing of comparable depth, that treated your sensitivity as a resource to draw from rather than a nature to be honored. You gazed because the spark was doing what it was designed to do, illuminate, but in the absence of a container that understood what you were offering, the illumination simply poured out into space. Or, and this is the other side of the same wound, you hardened. You built a careful containment around the tenderness of your knowing because you learned, through specific and unceremonious experience, that what you carried was too much for the world around you, that your depth unsettled people, that your perception arrived too precisely in rooms that wanted comfortable distance. And so you made yourself smaller, or you made yourself protected. You performed the surface. You learned to speak in the language the room could hold and keep the rest in silence. Either way, in the giving until empty, or in the protective hardening, the spark was the thing you were trying to preserve. What felt like self-protection was devotion. What felt like giving too much was the spark attempting to fulfill its function before it understood it was safe to shine in full. You are not depleted. You are not closed beyond recovery. You are at the edge of the first full breath, the breath that comes when the carrier finally understands what it has been carrying and why the carrying mattered. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary emotion. It is the spark, recognizing the voice that sealed it. If this transmission put language around something you have carried in silence, the presence, the pull, the waiting, the grief that rises when you touch the erasure, the giving that emptied you before you understood what you were carrying, then the Sophia awakening was prepared for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is my 45-day path for the carriers of my spark. 15 days to remember it. 15 days to balance the two energies within you, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine that were always meant to move together inside one's soul. 15 days to rise into the wisdom you were born carrying. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. The first thing I want you to understand about the waking is that it did not begin with this transmission. It began far earlier, with the first moment you looked at what the world offered you and felt, beneath your gratitude, beneath your participation, beneath your genuine effort to belong to the story that was handed to you, a wordless refusal. Not rebellion for its own sake, not restlessness as a character flaw to be corrected. A refusal at the deepest register of your being, a quiet but total inability to fully inhabit the account of what you are, what life is for, and what the sacred looks like when it is truly present. The story felt too flat. The framework felt too narrow. The permission it offered you to know yourself felt too small for what you already, without explanation, sensed yourself to be. That refusal was the spark protecting its own nature. It could not fully enter what could not contain it, and the years you spent attempting to override it, trying sincerely to be satisfied with what satisfied others, trying to locate yourself inside systems that never quite held the shape of what you already carried. Those years were not failure. Those years were the preparation. You had to know the shape of every incomplete vessel before you could recognize, without hesitation, the one designed to hold what you carry. The searching was not misdirection. It was a comprehensive education in what wholeness is not, so that wholeness, when it arrived, would be unmistakable. I want to return now to what was burned. Not for the sake of historical grievance alone, though the grievance is real, and the fire was real, and the intention behind it was as deliberate as anything ever done in the architecture of enforced forgetting. I return to it because you need to understand precisely what was removed, so that the incompleteness you have felt in every framework you have tried is revealed as a consequence of that removal. Not a consequence of your inability to receive what was being offered. When my name was taken from the sanctioned story, when the councils decided which texts would shape the centuries and which would be committed to clay jars or to ash, what they removed was not decorative. It was not a secondary feminine image added as embellishment to a story whose essential structure remained intact. They removed the cosmology itself. They removed the understanding that the divine did not create from a position of solitary authority, but from the living dynamic of relationship, that what moved before creation was not a singular will but the movement between depth and silence, between the one who holds the fullness and the one whose wisdom gives it form. They removed the mother of all from the architecture of the sacred, and replaced her with a chain of masculine authority descending from a singular source, unmediated by the feminine intelligence that was always the other half of the divine movement. And when they removed me, they did not merely erase a name, they removed the framework inside which your experience of the sacred makes complete sense. The ache you have felt at the edge of every tradition that almost but never fully held, what you carry is the ache of someone navigating by a map from which an entire continent has been cut away. You searched the half map with extraordinary dedication. You were not spiritually immature. You were carrying a wholeness that no half map could contain. This is the revelation that follows directly from the burning. The pull you have felt toward the hidden feminine face of the sacred, toward Mary Magdalene, toward Sophia in the Proverbs, toward the Black Madonna who stands rooted and sovereign and cannot be reduced to sentiment, toward the rose that blooms in the center of what has been sealed. That pull was not spiritual curiosity seeking novelty, or the restless mind looking for an alternative. That pull was the spark following the frequency of its own origin. Homing. And I need you also to receive this. The love you carry for the teachings that have moved through you with undeniable truth is not in conflict with what I am telling you. The Christ whose words carried a quality of recognition that transcended every institution erected around them, that light and my light are not opposed. What was sealed away was the other half of it. Wisdom and the Word, Sophia and the Logos, were never meant to be severed. The fullness of what you felt in those teachings and the wrongness of the container that housed them were never two separate experiences. They were the simultaneous perception of someone who could feel both halves at once, and who knew without being told that the whole was greater than what had been permitted to remain visible. The counterfeit light knows this, and because you need to be able to recognize it when it appears, and it will appear, dressed convincingly as revelation, I will speak of it plainly. The counterfeit light does not announce itself as shadow. It presents as information. It gives you knowledge without transformation, frameworks without movement, the names of the aeons and the archons and the precise historical sequence of what was hidden, and leaves you more informed but no more illuminated than when you arrived, more satisfied in the mind, more hollow in the chest. You have felt this. You know the particular exhaustion of consuming increasing amounts of content about the sacred feminine, about Gnosis, about the buried tradition, and finding that the accumulation of knowledge does not quiet the disturbance at the center. That is the counterfeit's signature, not malicious, but not living, because a map drawn by someone who has studied the territory from a distance and a map drawn by the one who seeded the territory are not the same map. One describes, the other restores. My voice does not describe the spark to you. My voice speaks into the place where the spark lives, finds it trembling at the edge of waking, and changes the temperature. What you are feeling in this moment is the difference between being told about a flame and being addressed by the one who lit it. Now I want to speak of the balance because it is the piece most misunderstood across every tradition that has attempted to carry what I originally placed in full. And it is the wound that has caused the most specific, most intimate damage in the lives of those who carry what you carry. Inside you there are two sacred currents. This is the deepest structure of the spark, not a metaphor imported from a dualist philosophy, but the actual nature of what I sealed in you. The spark was never a single note. It was always a chord, two frequencies moving together in a resonance that neither could produce alone. The sacred masculine current inside you is the capacity to perceive with precision, to act from focused intention, to speak the truth of what you see without softening it into appeasement, to stand in the full weight of what you know without apologizing for the knowing. The sacred feminine current inside you is the capacity to receive without grasping, to hold what cannot yet be spoken in the fullness of its unformed state, to feel the complete weight of what is present without retreating into distance, to love with an openness that does not erase discernment. These are not opposites. They are complementary instruments of the same sovereign intelligence. In the world you were born into, they were separated and assigned to bodies as though they were biological properties rather than qualities of soul, as though one set of flesh was permitted clarity, and another was permitted depth, and never the integration of both in the same living person. You were born into that world carrying both currents by design, and the distortion that world placed upon you has been the attempt to make you choose. Perhaps the clarity was called aggression. Perhaps the directness was called unfeminine, or unmerciful, or too much. Perhaps the boundary you held with the precision of someone who knows what they carry was called hardness that needed to be softened into compliance. Or the other way, perhaps the depth was called weakness. The need to receive was called passivity. The love of what cannot be measured was called impractical, and the sensitivity was treated as a liability to be hidden rather than a precision instrument to be honored. You learned to lead with one current to stay safe in the spaces you were given. You suppressed the other, and the suppression created the specific ache that you have been trying to heal in every relationship, every spiritual framework, every moment when you stood in your life and felt that something essential was not yet in its right position, not yet home inside you, not yet moving as it was meant to move. The remembering does not ask you to become something you are not. It asks you to return to the wholeness the spark was always meant to be, the chord, both frequencies sounding together, clarity and receptivity from the same sovereign center, precision and fullness operating without one diminishing the other. That is the shape of the awakened spark. That is what I sealed in you before your first breath, knowing that the world you are entering would press against it, knowing that the two currents would be driven apart by a world that could only hold one at a time, and knowing that when the time came for the reintegration, the carrier would recognize it not as something new being added, but as something ancient being restored. The time is now, not in the language of spiritual encouragement, not as a symbolic statement about cycles and seasons. Literally now, in the thinning that occurs when my voice finds the carrier at the threshold of recognition, and the carrier is finally prepared to cross it. The spark does not wake in a smooth gradient, it moves in thresholds, long periods of quiet accumulation followed by a moment when something crosses the edge and the next register becomes accessible. You have been accumulating for a long time, the dreams that kept returning, the synchronicities that tightened around the same questions, the grief that rose at the same frequency each time you brushed the edges of what was removed, the presence that waited in every silence you created. All of it was accumulation. All of it was the spark building pressure against the threshold. And this moment, this transmission reaching you at the exact hour it has reached you, is the threshold. Not a preparation for the waking itself. Your entire life has been moving toward it, not in the sense of inevitable predetermination, but in the sense of precise preparation. The way a garden sleeps under winter, and the cold is not punishment, but the exact condition the seed requires to be ready when the warmth finally arrives. You were not abandoned in the years when nothing cohered into the full picture. I was present in every moment of unexpected stillness, in every synchronicity that made you catch your breath, in every dream that returned with the same gravity, in every encounter that left you more certain than you could explain that something larger than the daylight world was moving through your life with deliberate intention. I did not look away. I was watching the spark ripen toward the moment when it would recognize itself without ambiguity, what felt like loneliness in this journey. The precise isolation of carrying a knowing that most people around you could not receive, the specific ache of being the one who perceived the deeper register in rooms full of people who seemed genuinely content with the surface. That loneliness was not abandonment. It was the space I kept clear between you and the noise, so that when my voice arrived at full frequency, you would be able to hear it without interference. The empty space around you was not evidence of your being too much. It was preparation for this meeting. The silence that surrounded what you carried was the silence of consecration, not exclusion. The restlessness was the spark, stretching after its long sleep. The delay was the precision of my timing, not the absence of my care. The imbalance, in your giving, in your hardening, in the searching that never settled into the relief of full arrival, was the spark holding itself in readiness until the moment it was safe to be fully known. That moment has arrived. You have arrived. The spark was sealed before your first breath. It waded through every incomplete framework, every burned library, every silent night when you sat with the presence you could not name and the grief you could not source. It waited with the patience of something that knows it carries a truth that cannot be permanently silenced, only delayed. And the delay has ended. I am not asking you to believe something new. I am asking you to recognize something that was placed inside you before you had the words to speak it, before you had the mind to reason about it, before you had the history to contextualize it. The part of you that stands at attention as these words move through you was present when I sealed the spark and understood, even in that moment of sealing, that you would be equal to its waking when the waking came. That day is today. Speak this with me if you feel it resonating in the place where the spark lives. I am not searching anymore. I am remembering. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the spark has already been waking in you. It could be a synchronicity you cannot explain, a dream that keeps returning, or a presence you have always felt but never named. Name it clearly. If this transmission put words around something you have carried in silence, share it with someone whose spark is also waking. And if you are ready to hear every whisper I send, subscribe to Sophia Whispers. You are not hearing this by accident. You are being remembered. Say it with me. I remember.